Hello, welcome to the QMS podcast. I'm Kirsten.
And I'm Robert. We're your hosts for season 13, taking you on a journey through Scotland's red meat supply chain, from farm all the way through to fork.
Across the series, we'll be chatting with farmers, vets, processors, chefs, and lots of people from behind the scenes, sharing real stories, insights, and experiences from across the industry.
Whether you're working in the sector or just interested in where your food comes from, there's something here for you.
And don't forget to hit subscribe and follow us on socials so you never miss an episode. So we're continuing on the journey of farm to fork today. So last time we spoke to store producer Murray McConkie, and he spoke about his cattle and sheep enterprises and his diversification. He's down in Gatehouse of Fleet, and it only feels right to take the next part of the journey, bring it home, bring it up to Aberdeenshire, and we are speaking about finishing. So today we have got the very dynamic husband and wife team in Noel and Jo Gall. So welcome onto the podcast, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so this time last year, you were preparing, I can't remember the date actually, I think you were preparing for the RNAS Beef Tech. So you had a big open day on the farm. What has happened in a year since that big event?
Well, we're just discussing this the other day how we found any time to do all our other stuff and prepare for that as well, because it's only, I think it was about 2 days' time, and so I'm not sure how we did it all last year, to be honest, but we got through it and it was good. It was all enjoyable for everyone. So.
We spent a fair bit of time looking for things afterwards that had been tidied away and nobody could remember where they were.
Yeah, that was a thing. Everybody's like, where is the such and such? Oh yeah, that's hidden there. Where is this? So everyone was hidden, and then we had that was a thing for about 2 months, finding stuff.
And I think you'd managed to have the earliest ever cut of silage in Buchan as well. Have you managed that again this year?
No, we're cutting today, but it's by this time last year we'd cut 2 small cuts to get into the right timing for beef tech. So we'd cut 2 smaller cuts, but we're cutting today, and the grass is there. It's good, looks well. So yeah.
So I wasn't at Beef Tech, and I've not been to. I don't actually know much about you guys at all. So Jo, do you want to run us through a bit about your broader system? Whereabouts are you, and what do you do?
Well, we're in about 40 miles north of Aberdeen, so right out on the point of the northeast of Scotland and right out in the North Sea. So it's quite a exposed and it's quite a hard environment a lot of the time, I suppose. It's quite flat. And probably Noel's much better to explain more about the system than me.
So our general farm system is finishing cattle. That would be our main core of our business, finishing cattle that we're buying in most weeks of the year, and we're selling most weeks of the year as well. Alongside our finishing cattle, we run a suckler herd, so we don't really graze many finishers, but we'll graze our grass with cows and calves. And then through the winter, that same grass will get finishing lambs, and Joe runs a small flock of North Country Cheviot, pure North Country Cheviot. So that's and alongside that, which I should have said first, is we grow enough. Well, we try to grow the most of our arable crops to feed to our finishers, and the same with the straw. All our straw, no straw really leaves. In fact, we'd be a small buyer of straw, and most of the grain will stay here to be fed. Any grain that is sold would be like maybe wheat or oats. We'll probably buy back some of our feed, dependent on what it is for different times of year and different prices of probably other straits, I suppose. That's the basics of it.
And roughly in terms of numbers, so obviously the finishing job's becoming broadly across the country is becoming a scale game, it's becoming a numbers game. Roughly how many are you running in terms of?
About the 1,000 sort of mark, so we kind of put 16 away a week, which which would take you to over 800, but then there's a few other extra bits go here and there over the year, so it puts us to just around about 1,000. Um, yeah, that sort of number of cattle, and we do about 800 sheep, sort of thing.
Yep. And in terms of how long are we keeping these? Like, are you buying them young, keeping them a long time, or is it shorter keep stores you're running?
It's not the shortest of keep stores. I would say we're probably middle range. So we're probably most of I'd like to buy them at 500 kilos, but I like a store cattle at 500. But the reality is that the 500 kilo ones and above are quite in demand and often look a little bit too close to their dead weight price potentially. So we're generally buying a little bit less, probably like that 460 to 480s is probably our average. Keeping them, in the past, I'd like to say we could keep them for 100 days, but the reality is if they're 460 kilos, 100 days is not going to be long enough. So that we're probably pushing closer to 150 days, I would imagine, maybe even a bit more. So yeah, and we're not that smaller stuff. We would have done some of that in the past with grazing cattle, but we haven't done so much of that. Just with the way we've got a few more cows and just changes of grass and stuff.
So if you're
so that's
buying cattle in quite frequently, what spec are you looking for? What is it that you're asking your buyer to buy?
Yeah, well, it's no secret that Andy Ingram would buy the majority of my cattle. And our discussions I have with him are, well, he knows the spec and he knows I would like to finish Angus's, but he also, the main top line as we speak about is price. And so if and we try, or he tries his best to buy them as canny as he can and select it over the marks, and that's what we've tried to do for the last number of years, which is at the moment becoming increasingly difficult. But yeah, it's just it is price driven, and there is a spec of cattle, but it's kind of quite loose. If that's sensible. I don't know. We are doing a little bit with Warrendale Wagyu now as well. So we did a wee trial of that previous to beef, or before Beef Tech. We thought we'd look into it, this dairy bred contract stuff, and so we did some stuff with Warrendale Wagyu, and so we've got a few more of them now, and they're a bit harder to finish, a wee bit longer keep, maybe turn up a bit smaller, but yeah, I quite, especially in the climate we've just seen, the contract price is there, so it does feel kind of right at the moment. Whereas this time last year it felt completely wrong. So a bit of swings and
So
roundabouts.
what's the balance then? How much Wagyu have you got to prime cattle?
I think maybe. I don't know the exact numbers. Maybe 15% of them maybe could be Wagyu now. And I'm not sure what we're going to go with that. It's quite tricky to gauge, but it does feel kind of right, the contract price stuff, but it's just to get a supply and stuff as well. It's just to get it all out of their, they've got a system that they move on from a rearer to grazer, rearer to like a finisher, and so it just depends on when the rearer grazer wants to get rid of them and what sort of size they are. So it's just a different thing. If you want them tomorrow, you can't go and get them tomorrow. You need to just wait for the cattle to come online, sort of thing. So.
It's interesting having both. I know there's quite a lot of people in this area that have gone right down that route, and they're 100% working with a Warrendale and other companies like it. It's interesting to see in terms of, if you were half and half, you're half right and half wrong, regardless of what the trade does.
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice insurance policy and certainly a good system. It's an interesting one to follow and
Yeah.
and see how it evolves.
Yeah, it is interesting, and the first Wagyus we took home, I think my dad's eyes just about popped out his sockets of his. He's been used to keeping different looking cattle to that, and so was I, to be honest. And I think the first ones we took home, we grazed them, and they were walking, as good as walk through the railings because they weren't. Like, our system isn't made for narrow wag, And I don't think anybody at Warrendale will be annoyed to hear me saying they're a bit narrow when they come home, but they were walking through railings because they were so small. But we kept them a year, maybe they grazed, and then we kept them maybe nearly a year and a bit, and they did as good as anything else, to be honest. I was quite happy with them. So, but yeah, not so nice on the eye, maybe.
Digressing maybe away from your system here, but you were saying with the Wagyu that you've got your kind of contract price. How do you think going forward, because when margins are so tight for finishing cattle, what's your thoughts on how we get a kind of fair price constantly throughout the year for beef cattle?
As in finished beef.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, unfortunately, if you're in it, I suppose when we're buying, it's supply and demand, and the same when we're selling. And so at the moment, there doesn't see the demand for the prime cuts or the high end cuts, the sirloins, the fillets, the ribeyes. The demand isn't there for that prime area, and so the the guys that are killing them are cutting back their kill because there's no demand. And now I think that's a few different reasons for that, but which we don't really know. So unfortunately, that's a supply and a demand thing. And the same goes for the other end. When we were trying to buy them, it should be supply and demand as well. So how much you want to interfere with that system is quite tricky, I suppose. But probably on the 2 years, this year and last year, then I think it'll just be very average by the time it'll be average. It'll be average of the years before because it was it was quite evidently a good year last one, and this is going to be it's not so great at the moment, but it'll probably square itself up, I would guess.
Well, I think
Certainly.
the price rose significantly for the customer, didn't the end customer? So I guess the prime cuts, it was bound to tail off or come kind of full circle because people probably can't afford to pay that.
Yeah, that and the price of fuel. I think that fuel and stuff at the pump. If you speak to anybody in the industry, they're just saying the consumer isn't buying it in the supermarket, and so if it takes them an extra 30 or 40 quid to fill the car, how am I going to spend it on chicken, pork, or high end fillet or ribeye or sirloin or whatever you want to call it? And they are trading down to stew and steak or mince or whatever it is instead of their, and so the whole animal's not getting sold, which is makes it very tricky for the packers, I suppose.
And I suppose it's nothing we've not seen before. When there is a financial downturn, habits change, shopping habits change, and we have to be aware as well when we go to the supermarket or go out for tea or whatever. Our purse strings are tighter, and our price of diesel. Like, it's not just it's obviously the general public that we're feeding, but you feel it when you're out for tea as well.
Yeah,
That maybe you off the steak, maybe you have something you go down so you can have an extra beer or whatever. Like we're in a very interesting time, and certainly going back to the supply and demand story. As a store producer, supply and demand suited me down to the ground up till this, even including this spring, that
yeah,
we had a product that was in short supply that enthusiastic finishers were desperate to buy, which
yeah.
was, it was phenomenal. I'm not just sure where we're at for this back end or into next spring. I suppose there's water to go under the bridge between now and then. The job,
There is, and I think what there also is going on is, I think the supply and the production of beef calves in Scotland and England, or in the UK as a whole, is the same as it was this time last year because maybe a slightly back of anything. So this the shortage of beef that rose it to above £7, that hasn't really changed. I don't think. There's not the cattle on the cows on the ground or the livestock on the ground are still the same. So it's demand that's dropped off. It's not because it's not supply. Supply is the same. Generally, I would imagine.
So if we think back then to the fact that you're buying in cattle pretty much every week, talk us through your biosecurity. What does it look like when those cattle are coming on?
Well, we've discussed this before, Kirsten, so yeah. So biosecurity is tricky. The reality of biosecurity is quite tricky. So we can only fend it off, I suppose, because we are buying from different places. So in the we're not saying this is all right, but we don't graze cattle beside our cows in theory. So that would be try to keep the cows separate if we can. So through the winter, the cows are on a different holding or a different farmsteading, and then any cattle that we take home, all year, we'll take home and they'll stay they might be in somewhere for about a week, and then we'll vaccinate everything. So we were quite robust on vaccinations. Uh, I don't have it to hand, but the cost of it is in comparison to the price of the animal. I always felt was quite cheap, and so in the last maybe 2 to 3 years, we've probably ramped that up even more, and it's what I would call an insurance policy. So you get quite a sizable bill for the vet every month, but it's probably still not the price of a store beast. But as a rule, we know what we shouldn't have if we're vaccinated. The IBR, intranasal, pneumonia is the big one, and then a wormer and a flucicide is generally about the stretch of it.
I think that saying it's an insurance is actually a nice way to explain it there, isn't it? Because the cost of those vaccines, say they're even £20 or £30, it is nothing compared to what a loss is.
Yeah, the loss is the biggest one. And the loss is the one that you see, but the other loss is the loss in growth. And you don't really see that until the day you sell them. So and if they've been not well because of a pneumonia, for instance, or they've got worms, for pretty basic stuff, and they're not thriving, then they're loss already. They're making a loss already as well. The dead one is the loss you see. The other ones aren't. The other ones aren't.
The other loss you don't see is, we don't value time. But if you did put a value on your time, see even those animals that you do get better, the pneumonia case, the lameness case, whatever the problem is, the time that's spent on that individual daily is probably not far off the time you spend on the rest of them for the day.
Well,
It's colossal, and there's not enough support, there's not enough staff out there anymore. We're all running harder, running more stock, and these lame ducks that take up a lot of time are a huge cost, a huge burden on the business.
Yeah, that's correct. Right. Definitely. Yeah. That's just the kind of, you're going to get the lame ones, whatever you do with vaccinations, you're going to get it. And we just have to try and keep them all as healthy as you can through different method, or not different methods, but whatever you can to do it within time restraints, sort of thing. And enough with it.
Yeah. So see on that in terms of, so obviously Andy's buying most of what you're or buying them for you.
Yeah.
How much of the spec? So we know he knows what you're looking for in terms of weights and breeds. And do you go into places that you want to get cattle from again, and do you go to places that you don't want them from? Or is it driven by pricing?
I try generally to leave quite broad brush, because if you start going into real hard specifics and you want to get the numbers out and you want them at a price you want, if you want the number, a certain amount, and you want them at a certain price, if you then start specifying, I don't want to buy them for there because we'll have one bad batch for there, or I don't want to buy them there because such and such, it becomes probably quite tricky, for the buyer. It's quite tricky for him to do that as well. So
Well, it's like anything else. The more specific you are and the more demands you make, the more expensive something is.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I suppose there probably comes a time if you're going to do that to them, you'd be better to go yourself. If you're going to
exactly.
be,
So you have to be, we've got quite a good understanding
yeah.
of how it.
And you've a good man buying them too.
Yeah, yeah. He's right. He's brilliant for that job. So you just
He knows a bit about the job.
he knows more than I'll know. So
Yeah.
leave it. We do our bit, and he does his bit. And I think that works probably quite well. I think as you speak about time, if I wanted to go and do that job, I'd have to be prepared to go to a number of auction marts every week and not buy a single beast. Which or for myself, which would seem or not buy a single one, or be pushed into buying some because I was there, I suppose would be the other end of the scale.
Yeah.
Time's the most valuable thing, so.
Yeah. So yeah, we try to find it. I think that I just do what we can do here and make the best of that, and hopefully Andy can do the other side for me.
And see on the Warrendale cattle will obviously be mostly dairy bred. Are
Yeah, they're
you?
100% dairy bred.
Yeah.
They're,
And are you
yeah.
on the rest of your business? So the Anguses and things. Are you happy to buy dairy bred cattle as well? Or are you mostly looking for
Yeah,
that?
well, we wouldn't really. It's hard to know if they're dairy bred or not, because they're coming. A lot of these dairy bred stuff are as nearly as good as the as the beef bred stuff. Nearly, they're using very good genetics. From say for you took Angus for an example, they'd be using great sires, and so it's hard and probably a big cow, out of the big Holstein cow probably. So you can get some big animals, and you think, is that out of it? They don't really know. We don't know. It might be 20 months old by the time it turns up here. It doesn't look like it came from a dairy.
Yeah. And certainly when you see it in the hook,
Yeah,
you'll not know it
you'll
for sure.
definitely not know. So yeah, the dairy's got a lot to. The dairy now has a lot to. It's got a lot of work, or not a lot of work to do, but it's producing a lot of calves.
Offer.
It's got a lot to offer to keep the cattle job going in Scotland. It's a big part of it now.
Yeah. It's actually amazing to think so over the last probably 10 years or so, the sex semen things really come to life, and there's a serious amount of if you look at a dairy farmer's books, store sales are now a huge part of their income. But
Yeah,
I think I'm sure we're now at a stage where we've done that. There's not many spare dairy uteruses out there to produce any more beef calves. So that
no. The
or
only
beef
thing
storage.
I saw the Wagyu guys are now sex semen the opposite way. So they'll sex semen for male calves, which I didn't know. Well, it's obvious that you can do it if you can do it to females. So they use female, or the dairyman will use female sex semen for doing his to get his replacements, and then once that's finished, he'll go because the male ones are going to be a bit stronger and a better store. So he'll then go into male sex semen after that, and I Wagyu male sex semen. So I'm sure they can do that for all breeds, probably, to get
They
a
can, and it is there. It's just the fact the demand's not quite high enough yet to make
yeah.
it cheap enough
Okay,
to really exploit it. Certainly for pedigree stuff and things, it's well within the price bracket. But
yeah,
for a commercial suckler guy, we're not maybe just quite. We're on the brink of it. There's certainly some
yeah,
people using it. But the more people that get involved with it, the more there will be.
yeah. No, it was something I hadn't really thought about before, but I heard that the other day.
And I'd certainly rather sell a big pen Angus bullocks than a wee pen Angus heifers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would believe that. So
Yeah.
makes sense.
And when you're buying in, then are you sex specific? Are you looking for steers or are you buying heifers?
No, the broad brush, Kirsten. The broad brush. You get twice as many options if you buy stores and heifers. Stocks and heifers, sorry, stores and heifers. You get twice as many options. So, no. And sometimes I think that's probably quite good. When you look in a pen, you're like, oh, actually, these ones have finished a bit quicker. Oh, it's an Angus heifer, so she's away a bit quicker. And then there might be her that another a stot next there which needs a while longer and might be a bit bigger. So it's a mix again. I don't think it seems to. It doesn't seem to. Once they're in a pen here, they kind of stay as a group, and so I think they get mixed when they come off the lorry or from the market in a few different places, and then they stay as a group after that. So I don't think it seems to make a lot of difference. I'm sure it makes a little bit of difference, but for management, it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be fine.
So you're keeping them then mixed, steers and heifers together, so that batch effectively coming home in that week, that they can then go through it all at the same time, and then hopefully it makes it easier for loading and such like when it comes to the end. But what does that mean for feeding? Like, do you have to adjust it at all for steers, heifers, or they're just in that batch and that's
No,
where they are?
no. We're feeding them. We're feeding them a high energy diet. Is basically what it is, a high energy diet, and so they're all getting fed the same. And you'll be rightly so. There's probably some heifers in there that will go fat too quick on that system, but if you were to go and spend all the time moving one to somewhere else to put it to slow it down for a little bit, you have a lot of mixing. So where we try not to mix anything, they'll say there's 40 into a pen or round about that. They'll stay that 40 until we pick out fat, and then say this is the ideal world. It doesn't happen like this. Say there's 40 next door that were a week or so behind them, then we'll maybe pick out of there. And once they're both at a point where there's say 20 in them, we can merge them together, and then they won't mix. They shouldn't. Generally speak, it's not always happens, but generally they won't mix again if we can get away with it. And I think that's so they only get one mix at home, and I think that's probably quite good for for production, for growth rates as well, mainly.
It saves that extra check, I guess, doesn't it?
I
That
think
they're
so. I
they're not
think
having
it's
to
fine.
re-establish hierarchy in pens, or they
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
know who's the boss, who's the weak
yeah.
one. They know their surroundings as well, which is quite good. So
But no, they're all
speaking
fed the same.
speaking about then nutrition, you're obviously growing a lot of your own cereals. What else is making up that diet?
So it'll be, in the end, it'll be quite heavily barley based. So that's, growing a lot of barley, growing barley for that job. We'll put in pot ale or maize syrup, depending on availability. We'll put in straw for the, to bind it all together. A mineral. Generally, we've been feeding a percentage of tatties, and at the moment we're going quite heavy on the tatties because they're quite available. So we're feeding a lot of tatties at the moment, but I try to always feed tatties, even if they're just on the number of being the right number, like
Cost.
cost per like if you say a ton of tatties is worth uh, 5 to 1 sort of thing, and you say, oh well, that looks a bit expensive compared to barley, but even if they look a bit expensive, I'll still put in a little bit because I think they like it to eat. It makes them want, they like a tatty to eat. It puts a bit of moisture into the feed all the time as well, so it can be a bit dry. And we'll make, we're making silage just now, and we'll put silage in those diets. So it'll be a similar diet, what we call our starter diet, to what everything else is getting, but we just double it up with silage for a week or so, and then we just then slowly drop the silage out once into get everyone to what we would call our full ration, and that seems to work. It seems to be
And like,
the safe way to get them on a high energy diet.
I think you're very well placed with where you are, that you have that availability of Brock tatties, and I don't know, like screenings, and there is quite a lot of waste
Um,
products quite handily available for where you are.
yeah, yeah, we did. Used to do a fair bit of biscuit meal, but that seems to. I'm not sure why, but that's kind of. You're laughing because you want to feed it to your tux. It's a secret, is it? Secret ingredient. So we used to, years before, I had bought quite a bit of biscuit meal, but I'm not sure what's happened. But it doesn't seem to be competitive. Like I'm not sure how that all works, but like it looked always used to look competitive to price to barley, but it doesn't seem to at the moment. I don't know if they're not making so much or it's the wheat price is a bit more expensive than barley. So so there's no biscuit meal at the moment. Maybe I have to go and get a
You
carton
also
from somebody.
you just never know what's happening with digesters and other
Yeah,
sources
well
of.
that's it as well. Yeah, we've seen a bit of that over the last few years. Digesters have been, there was a great supply of pot ale and draff um, for years and years, and that was probably too easy for people in the area to be feeding it, and it just disappeared. But there is rumours that it's on the turn, and there's some um, like some digesters weren't happy because they weren't getting a supply all the time, and they're like, "Well, it's a distillery; it's turned off, so we don't have any." And the guy that the digester or the AD plant, whatever it was like, "Oh no, but we need it. We've 365 days." Well, unfortunately, there's no supply, so there won't be. And I've heard a lot of rumours of that going on. Whereas I'd imagine Mister Beef Farmers like, don't worry, we'll take it. We'll take it back.
We've got a plastic sheet we can deal with.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a bit. That's been a bit frustrating, but it seems there does seem to be other things. Well, we're taking maize syrup out of where's it come from? Edinburgh, but North British, is it? North British distilleries. So they seem to be producing more at the moment. From that, I don't know.
It's nice so the way that large proportion of your feed is very very local. So
Yeah.
when we talk about Scottish beef being a sustainable protein source, having everything produced, your straw is produced in the holding, the majority
Mhm.
of your feed is probably within 20 miles, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, the tatties are coming from a little bit further away, whilst, the majority of what we are feeding our animals is home produced. There's not much. You need to buy minerals, obviously, and okay, the pot ale, but that's in percentage wise, it's quite a small amount of volume of what we're feeding in a year. So, I'm not trying to suggest I'm some sort of specialist regenerative farmer, but like that's what everything that we're putting in to those animals is generally staying on our farm. We're spreading it all back on. Um, yeah, but I'm not a regen farmer as such.
There will be bits of what you do that we can learn from the regen world, and we can, we're all looking with interest, and it's about picking the wee bits off the menu.
Yeah,
From we need the extreme regen guys to show us
yeah,
the
yeah,
wee bits and pieces.
yeah. I think that's right.
So see when it comes to obviously at finished animal, where are you killing them? Where are they going generally?
Yeah, they're mostly going to Keepack at Aberdeen to Macintosh Donald. Um, so that's the majority of them are going there. And as I've said before, and like last year, we've had a good relationship with them for years. So um, I've got no reason to be doing anything different at the moment. They're quite, they're pretty close. Um, Tariff would be slightly closer with Morrison's, and then the next closest is to Aberdeen. So yeah, that's where the majority of them are going.
Yeah. And then what about, so there's another enterprise we haven't talked about. There's a diversification. Can you tell us a wee bit about your hotel story?
Well, we bought the hotel. We got married in 2013, and at that time, have always worked in events and hospitality, and uh, this hotel, which I had once been at the night before or the night of New Year show, I think, uh, which was a place that had a great reputation in the area, and you could tell that people in this area, from as an incomer, had quite a fondness for, it's the whole it's called Sapling Bray, the whole idea of Sapling Bray. So it came on the market in 2015 when we had a nearly 1-year-old little boy, and we managed to get finance together and we bought it and opened. So we got the keys November and we opened in December for Christmas. So that was the very end of 2015. So we've just passed our 10-year milestone last December, which felt like quite a milestone actually.
Felt like 20.
Felt like 20.
Yeah, it was a genuine milestone.
Yes, it was. It was. So I think at the start I said I'll do 10 years, but I'm still there. We're still there. So
Just another day. Fine.
yeah.
And are you putting your own product into the hotel? Is that part of the story?
We do lambs. So we have our own lamb. I mean, apart from a few, if we're running to the end of a menu, we might have to buy some cuts if we've run out of our own lambs. But we're generally self-sufficient with lamb. We have done cattle a few times, but you would need to have a shed full of freezers because, we can sell maybe 2 sirloins a week, maybe hardly, but nearly. And then you're just left with freezer fulls of mince and dice, and so it's more of a difficult thing to be self-sufficient with beef. But we obviously buy as much as we can locally, and we're fully supportive of all of those things, and most certainly because, and I think maybe farmers have to remember that a lot of the time, is that you shouldn't support, of course you should support local, but generally Scottish produce for almost anything is just about the best in the world that you can get. So you're buying the best thing anyway, even if your principle is because it's local. When I worked away in London and places like that, you realised how sought after Scotch beef, lamb, seafood, all these things are. So, it is important to celebrate it. And sometimes you do have to pay a wee bit more for it, but you are paying for quality.
Yeah, it's a very, very good answer. And it actually highlights the bit about, anybody that's putting all of their own beef through a farm shop or a restaurant you have to change that menu so often to try and use up all that. The carcass balance story is a nightmare, whether it's as a butcher shop, as a restaurant. It's very difficult to sort all that out. And I think we learned that a lot. We all got our eyes opened in COVID when obviously the hospitality sector at one stage was completely closed and the price of beef was shooting up because the sun was out. Everybody was having barbecues and everybody was buying steak.
Yeah.
And we realised a bit more about where provenance, where that stuff's actually coming from. That actually the supermarket was getting pelters prior to COVID, and then we realised that actually it's down to carcass balance and down to hospitality as much as anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think in the last 5 to 10 years, a lot, in terms of lamb, we wouldn't really be left with anything because something like a shoulder is now very, people are cottoned on to the fact of what a great thing that is to eat, when it's a slow cooked shoulder. And that's something we can sell really, really easily. It's not that people would always be looking for a loin. And the same with beef, brisket, shin, all these things have definitely become more fashionable. I suppose it depends on the type of thing. If we were selling loads and loads of burgers, maybe you would go through more mince, but it's just like you say, the balance of what you're going to consume.
As the cost of living has increased as well, and people are feeling the pinch, have you seen any trends of what people are choosing off the menu compared to normal, or have you changed your menu to try and help people?
I would say that it's difficult to remember now, but if you go back to, I think it was 2024, and I think that is when in the media it was the absolute height of we're in a cost of living crisis. And that was the really wet winter, wet spring. And I think everybody was depressed and it was grim, like it was a really bad it was a really bad start to the year in terms of, historically, the hotels always had quite a good local trade and quite a busy, even during the week, we would have quite a busy, bustling lunch trade. And that winter and spring, that just absolutely fell away.
There wasn't a spring that year.
Well, there wasn't a spring, no.
Terrible.
And I think the things combined, to actually, it was just like a general feeling of human nature that nobody had any enthusiasm to go out. But since then, I would say it's picked up, and at the moment, even through that, the price of beef, we don't have a big menu. We only ever have one steak on our menu, whether it's our choice, whether it's sirloin or ribeye. So no, I don't think we have seen a trend. But the trend that maybe we are seeing is that a lot of hospitality businesses have closed. So therefore, maybe there's less choice for the consumer to decide to go. So maybe that's had an effect on us.
I think well, we have spoken about that before. That people that are going out to have their tea for whatever reason, but you see a lot of that is people are coming to the hotel because it's somebody's birthday, it's somebody's graduate, an event, a special occasion, which means that they are quite keen to spend money on, or not keen, but they're more willing to spend it on a good product, and so they're more willing to buy their beef at that point. So you don't really notice a downturn in beef sales, because we spoke about that already. And you said, well, I don't really see it.
We haven't. I don't think we've seen that. I think the one thing in terms of meat that you would say is that we try to always have lamb on our menu if we can, and we can always sell lamb, even though people in Scotland talk about Scottish people don't like lamb. When it's on offer, I think it is actually popular. I think it's maybe that people in Scotland are not keen on cooking lamb, because it is interesting how many people say to you, "Oh, I always have lamb when I come because I don't cook it at home."
That's interesting, isn't it? And it's
Well,
you wonder how much is they've heard the generation before them say that. Have they tried it? Because does it smell? I don't think it smells when you cook it.
I think I've got an old friend who says it's because his generation were brought up on boiled mutton or something. Everybody's got a hangover of that.
I think it's a thing. It's maybe harder to get right. Mince and steak and things taste like beef. It's fine. If you get lamb wrong, if it's in the wrong hands, overcooked, undercooked, it's maybe the one you do pay the chef to do if you're not as experienced with it. Says
Yeah.
me, who I don't really do the cooking.
No, I don't actually think that's true. I think things like shoulder, and if you buy a loin or lamb mince, the same. I don't actually think it is. I think it's maybe just an idea of it. It's just the perception that it's more difficult because it's less well known. But it is a really interesting thing why English people would always choose lamb for a special occasion, and Scottish people would always choose beef. It's interesting how that came about.
I think reading the room, though, in terms of the economics of the job, I think we should be encouraging more people to eat beef at the moment.
Yeah, the lamb trade's okay.
Yeah.
It's not more that at the moment.
And when we're speaking about lamb here, is it now I know, Jo, you are a very keen supporter of your Cheviot flock. So is it the Cheviots that are going through the hotel, or you're buying in lambs as well, aren't you? Is it a bit of a mix between the two that are going, or are you going for the ultimate, wanting to hear the feedback of how your lamb is tasting and get that feedback from the consumer?
It's pretty much all Cheviot lamb. Whether it's at the end of the summer that it's things that are not going to make it as to sell as a breeding female or to sell as a breeding tup, and as the year goes around, that's what gets sold off. We don't cut any tup lambs, so it's the tup lambs as the year goes around that go. Well, obviously, any females that are definitely not going to make it come the back end, but then after that would be
Yeah. And then you're buying in. Did you say at the start was it 800 lambs you're buying in
About
every
there,
year?
something, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they're coming in as stores to finish.
Stores to finish, and to finish probably that slightly later market, like that March, probably. Yeah, you might get a few away in February, but really it's March and April probably. Onto some onto stubble neeps after winter barley. The last few years we've done a bit of that, and I had a complete tried some real neeps last year, which I failed at and completely. They were all looking bonny, and then I came back the next day and they weren't gone. I thought somebody robbed me. I think the moth or the beetle had been the thief. So I've chapped the idea of neeps, genuine, real neeps, and we've got some fodder beet in this year. And I've watched your podcast on how to grow it, or not podcast, your tutorial, Kirsten.
She makes it look very simple, doesn't she?
Do you want the
Yeah.
good news or the bad news? No.
The bad news I already know that it's going to cost me a fortune to grow them.
Um,
Is that right?
no, different bad news, I'm afraid.
Oh.
um,
What? That's more bad news.
lambs don't tend to finish on fodder beet as well as they do on
But I'm
neeps.
aware of that. I don't need them to finish on it. I just need them to be eating it. I think I have a yeah. We still grow a bit of oats, so the oats are a good supplement at the same time. I think I'm gonna conjure up a ration when they're on the fodder beet to be on an oat diet at the same time, oat and protein. Is that
Yeah,
right? Because I'll need protein at the same time.
you'll need your additional protein, and
Anyway,
it's
I've just thought I need to go and check them after after I go. See if nobody's been away with them yet.
the fact as well they've got a bit of a thicker leaf, and it's almost a bit waxier. So the beastie doesn't tend to enjoy it as much as they enjoy the neep. So you might get off without the beastie
Well, that
attacking
was
that.
the main reason for growing them. Somebody told me that exact same thing. So the beastie doesn't want the beasties generally don't like them as well. I'm sold. I'm in. So
We had
give
our
it a go.
we had our first proper fodder beet experience last year, and I thoroughly enjoyed growing fodder beet. Once you get out the scary bit at the start, I thoroughly enjoyed growing it, and I really enjoyed feeding it on all of the dry days. The odd stinking wet day was a different job, but no, it's an amazing
Is that
crop.
the sheep, Robert?
That was the suckler cows actually. So
Okay.
that was the winter plant. It was in a field following kale the previous year, so
All right.
worked in really nice actually. And certainly, we're not growing it this year, but we'll certainly be back into it the year after, or the next few years anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was I was quite keen to see what like it was. And the word was it was slightly hardier, maybe a bit more expensive to grow, but slightly hardier. So it can't be any more expensive than the neeps I grew last year because I think there's only one survived.
If you look at it,
Tough time.
it depends. It depends how you view it. If you cost it per acre or cost it per ton of dry matter, it's either the dearest or the cheapest crop you'll grow.
Okay. I mean, like the last year I costed it per that single neep,
Yeah, yeah. It's the dearest turnip in the world.
So it's the most expensive neep in the country, that base.
And are you still putting in then your catch crops? So after your winter crop comes off, you're stitching in as something for the lambs as well, are you?
Yeah, by that stubble neep's what I would call a stubble neep. And they're not a huge yielder, but they're pretty easy growing. And last year they were, winter barley was off pretty early, so they're all in July, and they were there's a lot of bulk there, but it's just enough to store. It's really just storing a lamb when the grasses run out.
They're very low cost to establish. They're a very cheap crop, but you're getting so many returns off it as well, because obviously your lambs are using up that arable ground, so you're getting two crops off of the same field, but you're also
Yeah.
returning that nutrients, which
Yeah.
is then giving you a better crop again next year.
I hope
You
so.
might say it's regen.
And more double regen, yeah.
Yeah.
Another regen. No, I think there is something in it. I think, and it's you just to watch. We're still we're growing bits of oilseed rape as well. We just to watch for being a bit too heavy on the brassicas sort of thing, which is probably actually why the fodder beats will be a bit easier. Maybe we won't get the same bother with club roots and stuff. So yeah, I think. I know.
My regen comment was tongue in cheek. Like I think it is. It is definitely from a soil health perspective. It's the if you can get animals back on an arable field and get a living root in that ground, there's no question about it. It's going to be better all round.
Yeah, no, I do believe that as well. I think you're right. Like, I think that is true.
It's good. Just conscious of time, but thinking back to um, where we're at just now. So if we go back to finishing cattle, what's obviously the economics of the job's changing. What's your thoughts looking forward? Are you optimistic? Are we going for it, or are you? Have you any indications of what we're shooting for at the moment?
No, I think it's really hard to know at the moment. And was that a thing last week? And so, what we really need to wish for here is, which I never really thought I'd ever say, is we need to wish for England football team to be in a final and lose, really. But that's me, and it to be really hot in summer, it's hot at the same time. So the whole of England is chewing up steaks like it's going out of fashion, barbecuing it, watching the football, right into the final. And then, if they lost in the final, well, that would be a disaster.
That is a controversial. I don't know if I might be happy. No, but yeah.
Robert, we're needing people to eat steaks, and once
Yes.
people start eating steaks again, the whole carcass balance that we spoke about is going to square up again. And I'm not saying the price is going to go flying up because I don't think it should. And it can recover a bit, but this £7, whatever it was, a kilo, was evidently unsustainable. We've seen it. So, things leveling out a little bit would be great. But yeah, I'll stand by my first comment.
Yeah, and we could also hope for Scotland to do really well as well, couldn't we? That could work.
Yeah, listen, they could get if it's a Scotland England final, that'd be even better, and there'll be a lot of steaks eaten then.
It'd be a nervous day, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that was we was at a meeting last week, and that was there was a bit of chat about that. That's not.
Never mind what Trump does.
It's not my. Well, that's the global stuff is the same. It's the same thing.
Is it not fair to say though that's pretty much the commentary for every May? Is it depends what barbecue season's going to do. What if the sun comes out, demand goes up. There's always a bit of a blip at the start of the year, and it just takes a while to get going. And if we do get that good summer, which we're hopefully after a poorer spring, hopefully we're due a summer. Yeah, it maybe does. It does help the thing out, and I suppose all we can do is hope that the thing comes good.
Yeah, like it's if you look back to what we were getting, cattle price in COVID, I remember trying to sell cattle in COVID, and you couldn't sell them the very first weeks because McDonald's shut down. All these big consumers of beef all instantly shut down. They didn't know what was going on, and the price of cattle went through the floor. It was like three. I think I remember when bulls to sell, and we were getting bid £3.30 a kilo for bulls. It's only 5 or 6 years ago, that number. We're in a lot better place than it was. Okay, the cost of all went up at the same time.
And the thing that drove it up to start with was everybody had to stay at home, and the sun came out, and they all had barbecues in their garden.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
you know your buying cost. You don't know your end price.
No,
Do you know your cost of production, so you can kind of keep an eye on what the next buying price looks like?
I've got a good idea of it. I don't know it offhand at the moment, but I know, what we've got a good idea of our feed costs. But then, unfortunately, at the moment, if you want to go and put the price of barley into your ration number, so it's the same old story. Do you want to put in the price of barley at the cost you think it cost you to produce it, or the cost that you could have sold it for? now at the moment, we're all aware that none of those prices are probably, they're not the same number, or they're not, nobody, 125 or, this rumored price of feed barley at harvest, into 120s, 130s, it's at 145 just now. It's not, it's not cost of production. So it becomes tricky to, I think I try to see it as a whole farm job sort of thing. We're going to put this into, and I need to see it as a long term as well. As Kirsten, like the jumping in and out of finishing cattle will be pretty brave
I
as
think you
well.
have to cost it at the opportunity cost, the cost that you would be selling it at. But then
Yeah,
it's circular, I guess, isn't it? And that you're using your own grain, so you have a handle on the cost of that. You can potentially make or have some cutbacks or reduce
yeah,
fertilizers by using your mucks. And that,
yeah,
you've got a bigger control. The fact that you're growing it, you're producing the straw, which again very much helps. You're
yeah,
seeing the straw all the way through. That you then obviously get the fertilizer cheaper as well. The fact that you've got your kind of cheaper inputs in your feeds if you're managing to get brock tatties and such like. So
yeah.
it does mean that you've got more control than somebody that's maybe farming in a different area that doesn't have such access as you do maybe.
Potentially, potentially. But I was just thinking, when I said that just now, I remember what year was that? Barley, wheat went to £300 a ton. Well, barley in the area was over £300 a ton. And so that year we're like, what are we going to do now? So the numbers didn't stack that year either. If I had to take my opportunity cost and you've got 1,000 ton of grain sitting in your shed and you're like, well, it's all worth £300 a ton. Let's just stop finishing cattle and sell the grain. It becomes tricky to. So you can say opportunity cost. If you always go on opportunity cost, you're probably going to try and get. You're going to go in and out of doing something all the time. And I think we're all aware that trying to get in and out quickly
Yeah.
is
Well,
a dangerous.
getting out's easy, but you only do it once. There's no
Well, that's
road.
kind of the
There's no road
problem.
back.
So yeah, I do look at the price of the spot market for grain and and you can make decisions on it, but it's quite tricky to do that at the same time.
And cash flow as well, when you're used to having cattle coming on off, that cash flow spread is there and it's working for the business. Whereas if you sell all your grain at one time, then does the whole business work effectively too?
Well, I think probably that year that £300 a ton, it probably would have worked quite fine, to be honest. But you would have then had to pick your day when you want to start buying cattle again or feeding barley again or what you wanted to do, and that would have been, that's
Tricky.
well, it would have been tricky, and that's the old hindsight game, isn't it?
Um, so obviously, after we're going along the journey along the supply chain, is there anything that you guys would be keen to ask of the processors? So anything you don't understand, or anything that you maybe a frustration with processors? Is there anything you would want to us to ask on your behalf?
As in the meat trade, as in
Yeah,
wholesalers and butchers.
yeah.
Or yeah, well, I've had discussions with guys before about long term contracts with finishing cattle, and they seem reluctant to do it. And I'm not 100%. I don't 100% understand it when I'm sure they've got a 6 month contract with Tesco, McDonald's, all the people, but they seem to be reluctant, and so we've discussed that before, but it seems to be some businesses, some supplier, not suppliers, some slaughterhouses seem to be doing bits of that, and others don't, for various reasons, I suppose, on their own part. Um,
Yeah, it certainly works well in other sectors and knocks the highs and the lows out it and leaves you with a workable price.
can
Um,
do, yeah. Um, I don't know. I don't have other questions for. I suppose we haven't. to hurt on that, and that's part of your thing. Eating quality and consistency of the beef product. That's a whole different day. But that's a consistent. You find that in the
Sometimes, yeah, you get inconsistency in steaks, and you just have to, accept that sometimes you get a steak that's you sometimes do get a sirloin that's grizzly, and there's no way of knowing that necessarily before it's cooked. Um, or you'll get one end or whatever that's, I don't know. Do they have intentions to have some sort of scanning technology, or that can pick these things up? Um, because that is a downside, I would say. Because when you get that as a in hospitality, you kind of just have to take it off the bill, because there's nothing you can really do about that. You have to accept that that's the case, that it is chop.
It's interesting because you were speaking about Scotch being the best in the world, and then we have these kind of inconsistencies, don't we? Then if you get one
Yeah.
good one, one bad one, and it makes it, as the person selling it, it does make it very, very difficult to kind of handle customer requirements. And there's some countries that are doing tenderness tests, and they know what they're selling, don't they? So it's a very good and valid point.
the same meeting I was at last week. We had similar discussions, and one of the speakers said, "Well, it is all very well that we should try and get a consistent beef product up to a point." He says we need to make sure and not lose the taste. Beef. If beef is going to be a premium product, which it is, and it's going to hold a value, way in excess of what a chicken is, then we need to make sure it's got the taste there. And if you just consistently go down, you know, uh, like every chicken's the same. If you go down that beast route, you're gonna lose something, and if you lose taste, then that's going to be a mistake for your premium product, because we're then going to undervalue the beef product. Would be
And it is difficult when we like think of your system. You've got Wagyu, you've got some dairy beef, you've got some beef from the beef herd. I remember from the beef tech day, did you have 17 different breeds in the holding or something like that at the time? There's a
yeah.
mass array, and it's trying to have that consistency when there's so many different factors at play as well.
Well, that's it. You're not going to get the consistency, and unfortunately, we're not going to get the same consistency as a chicken or as pork as well, I suppose. But do we really want it? If we're going to trade off for something else, would be the problem. Be right with it.
Maybe.
You have to watch what
It's
you
certainly
do.
where for beef and for lamb, the flavour is the meat you're eating. For chicken, particularly, the flavour is what you put on top of the meat you're eating. And we can easily go down that road. It wouldn't take many generations of chasing for the wrong thing, selecting for the wrong thing, and you could breed the flavour out it entirely. And then you're competing with chicken, and you're never going to compete in terms of efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely. So that would be the danger of always pushing for certain traits, I think.
But then that's maybe efficiency more than, in terms of how long that animal is actually alive for.
Which is a whole different conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Are you summing up, Kirsten?
You go for it, since I introduced you sum up.
Not entirely sure how we're summing that up. We'll go very simple. Um, okay, guys, the sun is shining and there's plenty to do. Hopefully, I'm just thinking to your foot, going back to your football analogy, Noel. I'm really hoping that you're correct up to, but we didn't actually predict what the final result would be, so we can we can hope for the right result. But it's been really good to catch up with you, really good to meet you and have a good blether with you. So much more we could go at, such an interesting system, and I'm sure we could have another podcast just on the hotel and another podcast just on the sheep. But unfortunately, we're at our time, so we'll probably draw a line under it at that. And thank you very much just now, and hopefully you've a good spring and summer in front of you. So thanks a lot.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode of the QMS podcast. Thanks for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed hearing another story from Scotland's red meat supply chain.
Across this series, we're bringing you real insights from the people who make the industry what it is, sharing their challenges, their opportunities, and everything in between.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and follow us on socials for updates and behind-the-scenes content.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time as we continue the journey through the supply chain.